Okay, so we're good?
We'll get the thumbs up.
So I guess that's our sign, huh? The thumbs up. So I'm assuming everybody in here knows who I am. I'm Sandi Harding from the Last Blockbuster in Bend. This is my store manager that works for me, Dan. He's worked for me for 14 years. And this is Taylor, who made the movie. He was our director. So we hand all of our fame to him.
It's all Sandi.
Yeah.
So first thing you guys need to know is I am not a public speaker. So all those interviews you saw me do is nothing compared to how nervous this is.
She's done hundreds of interviews.
So I'm going to just start with a little bit of history of the store. If you guys haven't actually seen the documentary, the store opened in 1992 as Pacific Video. It was locally owned. Ken and Debbie lived just a couple miles from the store. And then in 2000, we franchised to Blockbuster. And then as things grew, we had 5 stores. I came on board and opened up that 5th store in 2004. So this last August, I celebrated my 18 years with Blockbuster, which was, it actually caught me off guard too, so wasn't expecting that. If you had asked me, 5 years ago if we would still be there, I would have probably told you no.
I did ask you 5 years ago.
You did, actually.
When you started filming the documentary, yeah.
She said no.
Exactly. That was actually my very first interview in the documentary. If you see me sitting there with the big lights, it was Taylor who did my first ever interview. And I could have killed Mr. Tisher, who called me at the last minute and said, hey, there's this kid who wants to make a documentary and he wanted to interview me, but I'm out of town, so you get to do this the night before. So it was great. But anyway, so I started in 2004, which was the peak of Blockbuster. We had over 9,000 stores worldwide. It was also the end of late fees program. And so that December, when we opened up our location, is when they rolled out that national campaign. And I had only been with the company for 3 months. So that was quite an introduction to the world of Blockbuster. Fortunately, we were a franchise, so it was a very short-lived program for us. We basically took all of our really good customers and made them all angry. And all of our really bad customers were super happy. If you guys remember back in the day, we used to have guaranteed stock. So suddenly everybody's keeping the movies and we didn't have guaranteed stock anymore. So people would come in and nothing was on the shelves. So it was, although I understood, because I know there were stores that were definitely charging astronomical amounts of money for late fees. We were not one of them. So we went back to a per diem. That was one of the benefits of being a franchise. We were able to do something different than the corporate stores were able to do. And we've always had that unique kind of niche that we were able to do things that they weren't able to do, which I think is part of what kept us going. So as we all know, Blockbuster made a lot of very poor management decisions. And led to a very sudden demise and exit from our video world. But as that was all going on, we were still thriving. We were still doing great, and we couldn't understand why Blockbuster wasn't making, different choices and trying to keep up with the rest of the world. Excuse me, just spit all over myself. I told you, remember, we started with I'm not a public speaker. But anyway, so we really did do a lot of really unique things. We talked a lot about that in the documentary, but we really focused on customer service. Obviously, anybody in here who's ever been a customer or owned their own business knows that that's the number one thing. If you don't appreciate the people walking in your door, how are they going to appreciate you and help keep you going? And so that's something we really focused on, as well as making sure we had movies. So as the other locations were closing, we were migrating those movies to the location we still have now. So every time we unfortunately had to close a store, that's what we did. Probably one of your biggest questions is whether or not we still have video games. And I'm very sad to say we do not. It was one of those tough decisions that I had to make, and it was actually right before we became the last one. Unfortunately, as the DVDs have depreciated in value, video games have not. As you guys all know, they're still just as expensive as they were 10 years ago. And now we have all the streaming services that also you guys can download your video games. You don't even have to go buy the hard copies anymore. So for me to be able to rent those video games and turn a profit is just not feasible anymore. And
These
so
guys still like the hard
I
copies.
know,
Yeah.
they still like the hard
Everyone
copies.
wants the
I know.
hard
Talking about
copy.
it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, if I want to stay in the last store, we had to make decisions that were in the best interest of being able to keep the doors open, and we had to sacrifice video games. Now, had I known that, you know, we were still going to be here 4 years later, and that we were going to be as nostalgic, I probably would have held on to a lot of those vintage games that we had in the stores. And I still have, I'm pretty like 99% sure, because I have a lot of random things in my garage, that I still have one of those old briefcases that the Nintendo 64s came in. So I'm gonna have to dig out and see if I still have one in my attic, but pretty sure that I do. I don't know, what else should we add before I start talking about the craziness since we became Last One?
I think that's
what
what
they're
wants to
here
hear
for.
about,
Oh,
yeah.
okay,
What
so,
have we
To add
done? What
on
have we
that,
experienced?
I remember when you got rid of games, because we were already making the movie.
yeah, in 2017.
Yeah, and I did come in and buy a bunch of those games.
You did. I remember
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Because that's like back in the day, we'd get our video game collections from rental stores because they were super cheap, the previously viewed copies. So I still have
Yeah.
whatever was those last few games.
Well, and if those of you who came in to visit where we recreated our store over there, you'll see that we, you know, my staff had a great time trying to pick out vintage movies and video games that they were going to recreate those covers for. But we, in getting ready for this, you know, in the last 6 months or so, I actually found an entire box of those game covers, and we were like super excited. So those are the original ones from Blockbuster. The DVD one we had to recreate, but the game one, I was like, it was meant to be that we would be able to have a box of those game covers somewhere to be able to do this. But yeah, I mean, video games were a huge part of our business, and I mean, I still remember those 5-day rentals. I think I still have some stickers that say 5-night rentals somewhere in the store, but it's a very sad thing. So then in 2018, we closed our last location in Redmond, which is where the big sign is from that you guys saw over there. It actually was in the grass. That's why one side is very worn out and the other side is not. You can definitely tell which side the sun rose on. And I really appreciate all of you who were very delicate around it, because it is 23 years old. It's kind of scary. But anyway, we, you know, unfortunately had to close that location, and we became the last one of our franchise that we had. And then I purged some things. Oh, broke my heart. But I purged some things, thinking that we weren't going to be there. We didn't think we were going to last out 2018. And then Alaska called. Alan Payne called Ken and said, hey, we're going to close our stores. And we were shocked. We never thought in a million years we would outlast the Alaska stores. And then the whirlwind happened. And did any of you guys have the Blockbuster beer? Did anybody come to Bend and do that? So we did. I know I have some in my garage too. But we actually teamed up with 10 Barrel, who is owned now by Anheuser-Busch, but it was originally a Bend brewery. And they reached out to us again before we became the last one and said, hey, we're going to do a charity event and we would love to bring attention to your store and that you guys are still here. And I was like, that's awesome. And that is, you know, after the John Oliver stuff. And no, I do not have the jockstrap in our store.
Everyone asks
I
about
know.
the jockstrap.
I know, it's just
don't
crazy.
know. That's the one thing.
But that is back in Australia with Russell Crowe. So sorry, we don't have that one. But it was around that same time that it happened. So they were kind of trying to help bring some attention to the fact that we were still in Bend and the Alaska stores were not the last stores. And they decided to create a Blockbuster beer. And so we did a Sinister Black infused with red licorice. So it was like the perfect thing. And we were making, it was good. But infused with licorice, I mean, you could infuse it with popcorn, but it would be gross. So licorice was way better.
It was gross anyway.
But anyway.
It's delicious.
It looks nice on my shelf with all my other
Yeah,
Blockbusters.
exactly. Okay, you're losing the point. So we teamed up, made this great beer, and everything was going great. We were planning this, didn't really talk to Dish Network about it because it was supposed to be a local thing. It was supposed to be small and not a big deal. And so then we became Last One. So we literally had over 1,500 people in our parking lot, and they ran out of beer in about, an hour or 2 hours? They had to limit what people could buy. They kept running back and forth to the brewery to get more. I had my store smell like beer for several days after we were done because people were walking around with their cups of beer everywhere. And we had no idea. That was probably the first thing that we did that made us realize just how crazy things were about to become. But we had a lot of fun, and Taylor was there. You had your little machine that flies around in the air. What is that called?
A drone.
Thank
It's
you.
called a drone.
Yeah, see, remember, I'm from Blockbuster. I don't do new technology.
They don't have
Future.
phones in the 90s.
Definitely not. So that was, that was the first big thing. We had not ever sold merchandise before. Suddenly we had people asking us for t-shirts and sweatshirts. So I called our local father and son team in their little 1,000-square-foot building that used to be a gas station to see if they could make us a bunch of t-shirts for everybody. And they jumped on board. They got a couple other stores to help them, and suddenly we were in the t-shirt business. So everything that we sell, with the exception of the Blockbuster game, which is on our website and at the store, is sourced or printed in Bend through another small business. So we're incredibly proud of that. We could definitely buy, those polo shirts somewhere else and get them cheaper and not have to charge $60, but we're supporting other mom and pops, and that was way, way more important to us. And without that merchandise, we would never have made it through the pandemic. That was the big thing. We had the fortune, I don't know how many of you out here own your own small business or have been involved in that before, but small businesses took a huge hit during the pandemic, as we all know, and we were all trying to do DoorDash and all those things and trying to support everybody. But we would never have made it through without everyone's love and support and buying those $2 membership cards and the different things that they have done. So we're very grateful for that. And that brings us kind of up to now. And we have done so many cool things. I think that's probably the thing that, in addition to Taylor making this wonderful documentary that did really well, and we have not, the whole Netflix thing is not lost on us. They did it, Netflix picked it up, and I think the irony of that is not lost on anyone in this room. But, in addition to that, I was on the To Tell the Truth program. Got to go meet some really cool people. Fluffy was one of them. He's super cool. Gabriel Iglesias, if you don't know who Fluffy is. Dan got to go on a game show as well.
I went on Jay Leno's game show.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was called, but I won. Yeah,
Yeah.
I won $5,000. If any of you are curious about
Yeah,
that.
it was really cool. You bet your life, by the way.
Oh, you bet your life. Yeah.
And then Ryan, who runs our social media, you guys probably saw him around in his Blockbuster shirt with a camera. He turned 18 when we became the last Blockbuster in the world, and I was supposed to go to London. The Dave Barry Breakfast Show reached out and said, hey, we ran an ad or whatever they do, and asked our listeners, what's the oldest thing in your wallet? And overwhelmingly, they kept saying that they had their Blockbuster card still in their wallet. And the Blockbusters in the UK had been gone for a long time. So, that was kind of crazy. They said, we would love for you to, we'd love to have a competition to see what people want to watch, fly you to London and view a movie with our listeners. And I'm like, a free trip to London, I'm in. Never been out of the country, that side of the pond. I've only been to Mexico and Canada. And then suddenly we became the last one in the world. And the Ellen Show was calling, and I still had a job to do, and I couldn't go to London because there was too much craziness going on. And above all of this, with our 15 minutes of fame that we're getting, and now 3, 4, 5 years worth of fame, I still have a job to do. And I still have people to pay, I still have movies to buy, I still have to keep the doors open. So it's like there's no way I can go to London. So Ryan was the only one with an active passport. Dan did not have one, and Ken's was expired. So my son, who just turned 18, which, by the way, the legal drinking age in the UK is 18, got to fly to London and take Point Break, which I think many of you have probably seen, to watch. And it was kind of funny because the biggest challenge, as we in America know, the studios have bought and sold movies a million times. So suddenly we went from, Warner Brothers owns this, to no, Fox owns this, to no, Sony owns this, and trying to get permission to be able to watch the movie with a bunch of people was kind of crazy. But he had a wonderful time. He got to go over and drink some beer. Because he runs our social media, he took a bunch of stickers and vandalized the streets of London by putting up Bend, Oregon Blockbuster stickers everywhere. And we actually had people that traveled to London, came back and said, hey, we saw your sticker on the light pole outside of the Abbey. And I'm like, oh God. And then it was great. He actually had the police approach him at one point, and he thought for sure he was in big trouble, and all they said is, are you really from the last Blockbuster? And they took pictures with him. And so he was just scoping things out, and I wish he was here to tell you the story because he had the best time. And so, again, we've gotten to do some really unique things. This is our first time ever being out of the store as far as doing this and creating our store. So as I've said all day, it was a labor of love to pack all that stuff up in a 20-foot U-Haul and bring it over here. But we did it. We're all tired, our feet all hurt, but we loved it. And you guys have been so wonderfully kind to us and coming in and taking pictures and talking to us about the store. And I just can't tell you how much I appreciate all those kind words everyone has for us. So you guys turn.
I think the-
So Taylor,
The
talk
director
about,
over
yeah,
here
talk
needs
about the
to
movie,
talk.
Taylor.
Yeah, I'll talk for like a couple minutes and then we'll open it up to questions if
Love
anybody wants to line up by the microphone. But yeah, it was wild. We saw this Blockbuster video in our town that I couldn't believe it was still a thing,
Those were
right?
still
We all
in
knew.
stores, right, at that time?
Yeah, when I first moved to Bend, the East Side one was closing.
Yeah.
It was that month. And I went in and bought a bunch of clearance video games and a bunch of DVDs. And I was like, okay, I got here just as this town was running out of Blockbusters. That's cool. And then a year, when did that close? 2015?
Yeah, I think it was about 15, 16, about the same time we closed our Madras store and our South. We actually ended up closing 3 stores within probably a 9-month period, and all of them for different reasons. One became a Verizon store, one became a parking lot, and then the other one, we had cut in half, and then suddenly, the corporate stores all closed, and we had actually taken the sign down when we cut the store in half, because it was a huge 9,000 square foot store. So we cut it in half, we couldn't support that much space anymore. And we took the sign down the same week that Blockbuster announced they were closing all their stores. And so everybody thought we closed the store. And people were coming in telling me that I closed my store. And I was like, oh, I promise you I didn't. If it's closed, I would be the first to know. It's not closed. And it was a huge store next to Costco, which was a very busy area of Bend. And so it was kind of nuts. But yeah, we closed all 3 of those stores within a very short amount of time.
Yeah. And so then I was driving around the town for a couple of years, passing by this sign that said Blockbuster, and thought, because all over the country there are signs that say Blockbuster. You can go find them and take your picture with them. They're all next to vacant buildings.
Yeah.
Some of them still have a drop box.
Some of them
are
have
a
turned the
liquor
ticket
store.
into different names now.
The
Yeah.
one in
Them
DC
are
that I
liquor
lived by
store.
said liquor in the Blockbuster ticket
Ticket,
shape,
yeah.
but it was in white and said the word liquor. Best liquor store in town, because
Blockbuster.
Blockbuster. But yeah, and then one day I came in and there was Sandi and there were these customers and it was like no one had told them that Blockbuster closed. It was 2017 and they were just like, no, it's 2005 and we're doing fine. And it was just crazy to see the store. I mean, it smelled the same, it felt the same, and it had all the new releases, which was not something you see.
It smells like old popcorn, by the way.
Has anyone in here been in our store?
Okay.
Yep. So yeah,
So
it's,
you know.
it is a
So-
time warp. We haven't changed any little bit
No.
about the
No.
store. So when you walk in there, it's 100% authentic in there.
Yep.
Right.
And we haven't changed our prices either. So that's one thing that we have kept our prices exactly the same. And nobody can believe that. Nobody can believe they come and get a 99-cent family movie for a week. It's like, yep.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Hmm.
How many people rent 99-cent family movies?
A lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised how many families still come into the store. Everybody always thinks, oh, they're older people who don't have internet or who don't know how to work, their Netflix. And it's not the case.
Yeah.
Especially...
It's partly the case.
It is. And those people...
Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of old people that come in there because they
It
don't want to
is.
stream.
It is, but we have a lot of new families that come in, and that's kind of fun to watch them bring their kids in. Their kids are like, why? Why don't we just turn on
Why
Netflix?
are we doing this? What is this? What are we doing
Yeah,
here?
and we're like,
Yeah.
this is before we had cell phones, people. And it's like, this is what we used to do. And the best part is, they pick it up and then they wander around and then you see the kids getting excited because they're over, in the Scooby-Doo or whatever they're into, and they're grabbing them all. And then their parents are like, no, just one. And then I'm just kind of chuckling going, and you used to be those kids that your parents were like, oh, no, just one. So it is fun, and we do have a lot of people that come in with their kids. But we have a lot of older clientele too, and those are the ones that have kept us going all these years. When things were tough, they're the ones during the pandemic, and even though Governor Brown We were not one of those stores that had to close. We still did for a couple of weeks because we wanted to keep everybody safe, and nobody really knew what to do. And so we started offering curbside service, which we had never done before. So we had people calling in, and people were calling me at home, wondering when I was going to be down there checking in movies so they could come by and get a movie. And anyway, it was great. Everybody kind of pitched in and kept us going. So.
That's such a wild concept to think about how many steps it takes then.
Yeah.
You got to call, somebody has to go get a DVD off a shelf, then you got to meet them in the parking lot.
No,
Yeah.
before we meet them
Do
in the
like a
parking
drug
lot, we
deal.
have to check it out to them.
Clean it.
Over the
Inside,
phone, clean it.
On your vintage computer.
Yeah, pay over the phone,
Pay
bag
over
it
the
up,
phone.
then look for their car outside.
That is
until
serious
they get there.
commitment. Like to see Die Hard 3, that is so much work. It's way too much work.
Totally worth it though.
It's totally
It
worth it. Yeah, not for Die
It was
Hard
great.
4, but yeah. Should we get some questions
Yeah.
from
Sure.
these fine folks?
Well, first,
Is that microphone on? That's good.
Yep.
yeah.
I'm just trying to line it up. But first, I want to thank you so much for coming. I told you this earlier, but it's been my dream for years now, even though there's not a lot left, to someday work at a video store or start my own
Mine too.
video game collectible store, because I would love to meet the other collectors, and I'm still collect home video myself, and I'm in home video collectors group on Facebook, and I try and tell people as much as I can, there's still advantages to watching stuff on home video over streaming, and even though sadly chain video stores are dead, 'cause just real quick FYI, the last actual chain, I'm pretty sure it's called Family Video.
They're gone.
Yeah, they
They
closed
closed during
in
the pandemic, yeah.
2021,
During
but the
COVID,
good
yeah.
news is we've still got you, Movie Madness here in Portland, Scarecrow
Mhm.
Video in Seattle. I think there's one in Kaiser, Oregon. I think there's.
Yeah. And I know I told you this earlier too, but if you have, I don't care if it's in your grocery store or if it's just your little local mom and pop, support them. Go in and see them
Exactly.
because it really is a labor of love, like
And
I've said a couple of
I think
times.
maybe one in Astoria, because last time I
Oh,
was
there
there, I
might be.
remember going by one, but ties into my question, and if you don't know, it's fine, but do you have any, do you know the rarest, like, DVD or Blu-ray or any?
I'm
Random
probably
ones.
gonna mess up the name of this, but I believe it's like Frogs or something. It is a classic horror movie that we have that we actually had somebody come in, and I think it's from like the 50s or 60s. I mean, it's
I think
really
maybe
old.
70s, I think I've seen
Yeah,
it.
okay, so I know that it's old, but somebody came in
You
and
gotta
was
have-
super excited that we had that on the shelf. And that's what I mentioned earlier, is as we closed the other locations, we were taking all those vintage movies and bringing them into our store.
Yeah,
And
that-
that was kind of our niche that the Red Box didn't have.
That's totally, I think, like one of the top reasons, why we should still support you and Scarecrow Video and
Yeah.
Movie Madness and that one in Astoria if it's still around. 'Cause
Absolutely.
the video
It-
stores that are still going, are helping keep the library of those more obscure, hard to find out of print stuff.
Yeah.
on home
Yeah.
Some of those
video.
movies will never make it to streaming.
Exactly.
I mean, some movies never made it
They'll
past
only
VHS.
ever be on VHS. I was about
Yeah.
to say, some movies never made it past VHS, so.
So support your local video store. Good
Exactly.
question.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah, that's
you.
good. Yeah,
Like I
thank you.
said, I'm really passionate about it.
Yep. Hey, Shamim.
You're up.
My name's Shamim, and I'm Blockbuster's biggest fan. I had my birthday party at Sandy's store 3 years ago. I wanted to thank Sandy, Dan, and Taylor for keeping the Blockbuster alive, and I got a question for you, Taylor.
Okay.
For when you first started doing this whole film, what did you learn from your experience that shaped into your newer documentary about Build-A-Bear? And for Dan and Sandy, for behind the scenes, what did you guys learn about being a part of Taylor's amazing documentary? And basically, what would you say for if Blockbuster was still, the company is still around today, who would you say is your dream team leadership, and if the company still is around? for first.
Yeah, so I can honestly say there's none of them that I would probably still want to have on my management team. But I do think that it would be wonderful if there were more stores out there, and I would welcome if Dish Network gave people the opportunity to open up Blockbuster stores, because let's face it, when we're gone, I mean, that's 9,000 stores that are no longer around. And although the nostalgia is what's keeping us open, and we love people coming to visit because we're the last one, how sad is it going to be when we're not there? So I would love it if there were more Blockbusters or more video stores in general. And I think that the pandemic really opened up people's eyes to how much we missed that. When we were all forced suddenly to sit at home with each other, we were remembering what we used to do. What did we do that kept ourselves entertained? And, going to the video store and renting a video game, or renting a movie, or doing something fun, or getting a movie and a video game so that the kids could go do something while mom and pop watch that R-rated movie, was something that we all really missed. And so I think that the more stores we have, the better. So
what'd you learn from being in a documentary?
how much I love Taylor.
Aw.
So,
Taylor's great.
and how patient he is when...
Taylor and Secret Grace.
Yeah.
That was so much fun.
So I don't know if any of you guys know who Bill Murray is, but he has a famous thing that Taylor told me about, which is one and done. And I am like probably the worst person to do an interview with, because I will rattle off something and then you'll ask me to do it again and I'll be like, I don't even remember what I said. So I got to the point where I was like, one and done, dude. If you don't get it now, you're not going to get it. So, but no, I think I learned a lot about myself doing this, because my very first interview ever, and I was so nervous, and by the time we were done, Taylor was so great about making me comfortable when we were doing it, that it was more fun than work. And that was something that I really appreciated, because had he told me that I was going to be in the documentary as much, I probably would have a different take on it.
You wouldn't have sat down that first time if I told you how
No.
many people were going to see that movie.
But I had no idea that he was going to put all of that into the movie, and that suddenly people were going to be telling me I was, I'm very privileged
She's a local
to
celebrity.
be, yes. I'm very privileged to be the face of the Blockbuster name, and to be able to represent all of us in Oregon and all of us in Bend, and to be able to keep the store alive. But I am not under any illusion that it is all because of me. My team works very hard, and the owners of the store are amazing and supportive, and I would never be able to do my job without them.
That is lovely, Sandy. I will say that our movie would not have been successful at all if not for you.
Well, thank
And
you.
that's the thing, left, but that I'm taking forward. I am doing a documentary about Build-A-Bear Workshop right now, and the main thing I took forward is like, you need a great main character. No matter what your documentary is about, it's about people. Everything is about people. And Sandy is one of the best people.
Thank you.
Next question. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Give it up for Sandy, you guys.
Thank you.
Hi guys, Summer. Actually, my first job at 16 was at Blockbuster, and I have officially stolen a movie from every Blockbuster I have.
I forgive you.
What is your most rented video to date?
Probably in our location, Goonies.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Goonies rents a lot.
we really push how it's Oregon, and that we all love it. And I can tell you it's probably the most movie that's stolen. No, actually.
Goonies and Fear and Loathing are
Yeah,
probably the two movies
but
that
Goonies,
stolen.
we're constantly replacing that on the shelf. And it's really not stolen, because people have their credit cards on file and we charge them. But people come in and either rent it or buy it. I mean, we always have it on the for sale shelf, and yeah, probably Goonies, I would think. And close behind that would be the classics, Back to the Future, Indiana Jones, Star Wars, Jurassic Park. The Marvel movies definitely support the store. So Captain Marvel, and no, that was not our location. Disney did not reach out. We don't have wooden shelves anymore. But we do have a funny little story about that, and I'll catch the next person. I'm sorry. We still have 15 minutes, so we're good. But we actually, in the movie, when she crashes through the ceiling, and then she turns around and shoots the cardboard cutout, we actually had someone who watched that, who loved that so much and loved our store. They found that cardboard cutout in their community, brought it to Bend, set it up in the middle of the store, and donated it to us. So now we have that True Lies
Arnold Schwarzenegger
cutout in the
store.
store. So, and we get those kind of wonderful things. I have my pin, if you guys didn't notice it today, from the first gaming championship for Blockbuster that someone donated to the store, and it just happened to be, whatever fate, whatever, that they donated it before we were coming here. So it was kind of cool.
Super cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
So, I used to work video retail, so I appreciate the work you guys did. And my girlfriend of several years at the time, she was working at a Blockbuster. They got the rug pulled out from under them
Yeah.
too. So I feel this thing in most of those stores. The question I got for you, part of my big Blockbuster fascination growing up was checking out all the direct-to-video stuff, like your Full Moon Night releases and whatnot, all the good stuff, right?
We still have a lot of that good
Still
stuff.
makes some of the
Oh,
best
yeah.
games, DVD stuff.
So knowing that they're still around and that, there's definitely appreciation for this, do you find that the market is still there, supporting these releases?
I do. People really do love the independently made things. I mean, obviously our documentary did very well, but we do have a lot of people reach out, and that's actually the thing I think we get the most emails and phone calls about too, is independent filmmakers who want to donate their movie to our store, which is great. So it helps kind of keep that thing alive, that we have unique titles that you're not going to find everywhere else, not unless you have 7 different streaming services. So I think that there is a niche for that. I think that there's still such a love for movies. And there's a lot of independent. I mean, we've got part of the film school here too. I mean,
We've
it's a
added
great thing.
so many of those kind
Yeah.
of movies to our inventory because so many directors have reached out and said, I want my movie on your shelf. I'm a huge Bobby Rowe fan. I don't know if any of you have seen The Houses October Built. They're fantastic. He actually came into the store. I met his family. We have his movies on the shelf now. So
Yeah.
we've just had a lot of really great indie films make it into the store that we never thought we'd have in there.
Yeah.
So
All right, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Welcome.
Great question.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello from Alaska. I actually
Okay.
yeah.
I live a mile away from the John Oliver DeBar location before it got shut down.
So you worked with you knew Kevin then.
Oh yes, eccentric guy.
He is a great guy.
But can you give us a little bit more details to why specifically the ones up in Alaska shut down? Since
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know what Alan's decision, what made that decision for him. But you have to remember, he lives in Austin. So, and he originally had, I think Border Entertainment, which is who originally had that store, and then I think Alan took over it. I believe if they weren't the biggest, they were close to being the biggest franchise for Blockbuster. And they had the most locations nationwide. And I think that it got to the point where, he lives in Austin, his Texas stores closed. I think they closed the last one at the end of 2017. And so by then, I think he was just not sure how much longer and not sure how much more he wanted to travel to Alaska. And I know that he had Kevin, who was the store manager, who had worked for him for years. And I got to meet Kevin. He actually came down for the beer event when we had our big collab with 10 Barrel. I know he had him up there, and he had a wonderful staff, and it was very sad for him because they both were in Bend at the same time, and he had told me how much he appreciated Kevin's hard work. So I don't know. I mean, I have never had that conversation with Ellen, but
I have.
but have you? So I'd
Yeah.
imagine it's probably that it just got to be exhausting.
Yeah, he said it was, because we interviewed him the month that store closed for the movie. That wasn't on purpose. It's just
Yeah.
how it happened. We wanted to go up and film at the store, and he was like, well, I'm in Oregon and it's closing, or it's
Yeah.
closed. So,
If you don't-
but he said it was just a matter of seeing the writing on the wall, seeing the trends. He was talking to us about data and all these things, and it was like, if you can keep it open and it breaks even and everybody gets to go and enjoy it and it's this great thing, that's great, but it's going to start losing money, and then it's going to start losing money rapidly, and then it's just not financially viable.
if you don't mind me offering a little bit of context too, less than 10% of the Alaska landmass has access to internet.
Right.
And some places like in Fairbanks or Soldotna, which were still immensely profitable, less than half of those cities had access to internet. And even if they did, it was metered. Like in one village, you had to pay per gigabyte total transfer.
Yeah.
So when the ones up there closed down, locals had to start scrounging together to figure out making their own local base, because now there was no way for half the population to watch movies.
And that again was why we were shocked.
We were all
Yeah.
so sure they would be
That
last.
we thought they would
We all knew
outlast
it.
us for
Thank you,
sure.
and thank you
Yeah.
for coming to visit from Alaska.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys know about the free Blockbuster movement with the little
Yeah, the little things.
They need
Those are
those in
cool.
Alaska.
Yeah, they do.
They should pop those up.
Yeah.
Put them in the Blockbuster parking lot.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, our local Blockbuster turned into a Lego shop, so I'm glad y'all are here this time.
There you
That's
go.
kind of
Yeah.
cool though. At least you get the Legos.
Just a random one, like from the day to day. Is there like a movie that like sold like really well that you guys were like, really, this movie in particular?
Okay, I don't know about Dan probably because he does more the day to day, but I can tell you that probably the thing that made me laugh the most is I had an elderly woman come up and rent Ted. And I'm like, you know that this isn't really about a cute little teddy bear, right? And she's like, oh no, I think this is awesome. And I'm like, okay. So I just was fine. So you can never judge a book by its cover. But you can probably answer more of the day-to-day things that maybe have surprised you.
I mean, that is when you get older people that come in and they pick these movies up and they come up to the counter and you're like, okay, or like kids wanting to rent Sausage Party. It's like, well, you can't. This isn't a movie for them. I'm sorry. So it is like a lot of. It's hard to answer that question because there's not really a lot of stuff that shocks me anymore at the store. Like I've had so many different experiences and conversations and moments happen where I don't even blink an eye at it anymore. It's just like
What about-
I think going through filming the documentary originally, that was like a wave, and when we became the last one, that was a wave,
Yeah.
and it was like overwhelming, and we had to learn to do all these things on the fly. But now, 5 years later, nothing really like catches me off guard or shocks me anymore. And when it does, it's like, whoa, that's never happened before.
What about Sandy? You still buy all the movies.
Yeah.
What's something?
With Dan's help most days.
Yeah. So I know, I think Alan told us the story of how they bought way too many copies of Titanic because they thought it was going to be huge, and then it just sat on the shelves. Has there been anything where you either bought way too many copies or way too few?
Oh, there's lots of things that are
Okay.
way too few.
Yeah.
It's always way too few. It's never
Yeah,
way
way
too
too
many.
much.
We don't run out of movies anymore.
No.
Like when The Dark Knight came out, I remember there was like 98 copies of that movie, so we did like a triple
Yeah.
bang on the back
So that's
wall.
one
We don't
thing
get
that-
those anymore. It's like
Yeah.
16 is like the most we get of a movie.
And you have to
now,
remember
so.
that when the pandemic hit, Hollywood shut down. And one of the, RevShare was a big program, and I know you guys who watch the documentary know that Ken kind of talked a little bit about RevShare, but it was where studios gave us all deals where we could buy a bigger amount of movies to have on our shelves. So that's why when you come in, there'd be 200 copies of Spider-Man 3 on the shelf. And I remember when The Day After Tomorrow, which I actually do enjoy that movie, but I remember when it came out and we had 3 bays and this huge thing. It was the first wall I had to build. And we had, or Troy, oh my God, we had so many copies of Troy. But nowadays, RevShare is no more. And the company, that was the one thing in March when the pandemic hit and everybody was shutting down. I got a phone call from them saying, we are not going to survive this. We're closing. And they're from here in Portland. And then suddenly I had stores from Canada and all over the country calling me going, what are you going to do? And I'm like, why are you people calling me? And it's like, I already buy them all.
They knew already what was gonna happen.
Yeah, and so now we're buying them wholesale, just like you guys do. I'm going to Walmart and those places. We do have one vendor we get them from, but it's wholesale, so we can't afford to get 50 copies.
Plus,
we
they
get 18.
don't ever rent out, so we don't. I mean, I
Not
think
as
the last
much.
movie that we rented out of was Everything Everywhere All at Once, but we only had 8 copies of it. So
Yeah.
it's a pick and
It's
choose.
Eight
You know.
copies.
Yeah.
Thank you for your question.
So back in the day, my brother and I, when we had the N64, we only owned Mario 64.
Of course.
So for like 10 years, we just rented games from Blockbuster because we didn't know we could buy our own games. So anyway, thanks for that. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah.
But the next question I have, and I hope it doesn't get heavy or anything like that, but when I asked one of you at the inside the room, I asked about the partnership with Netflix and the new show that they're
Yeah,
making. 'cause
we talked about that earlier.
Yeah, because
how
I think
we-
it's important to like pay homage. It's like paying homage to something versus cashing in on something. So I was hoping
Well-
maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Unfortunately, I mean, we hate to talk negative about Netflix, but that's kind of what they're doing.
Well, and it actually isn't
we have no
Netflix, so-
affiliation with
But it isn't
the show.
Netflix.
It's
So this
modeled
is,
after us.
when the documentary came out, or right before it did, I had people reaching out asking me if they could make the Blockbuster musical. I mean, I had people reaching out about everything. So there were several production companies who wanted to do a show. And so we knew that. And so they all pitched their idea to Dish Network. And Dish Network chose one that they thought was the best concept. And it was originally supposed to be on Hulu. And then Hulu at the end kind of backed out, and then our documentary hit Netflix. And so then once our documentary hit and we were, in the top 10 and everybody was
It
watching
stayed in
it.
the top 10
Yeah,
for
and in
good
Canada, I
reason.
think it
Still
was.
in the popular section.
Yeah. So when that happened, Netflix is like, yeah, we'll take it. And so that's kind of how Netflix. So it wasn't an original Netflix thing. It was another company that came in and pitched it to them. And I don't want to talk negatively about Netflix or anyone, because I can tell you that even Family Guy just did that episode, and which was, we do not have shotguns in our store, just so everybody knows. And we don't charge people $30,000 in late fees. But every show that does something, every time someone mentions our name is a positive thing for us, because then people remember we're there. So as much as you're right, it would have been great for them to reach out to me and or at least come and see the store so they have an idea of what they're representing. Someone just said something about working in a Blockbuster. There are so many people who have worked at a Blockbuster store for them to reach out and talk to. That wasn't me. I know, because I've spoke to a few of them, that they actually did that. So even though they didn't reach out to us, which I wish they would have because we are the last one, I know that they got factual stuff from someone who worked in a Blockbuster, and I know they're going to tell funny stories. So I can't wait to see it, just to see how good of a job they did. And you're right, there are many people out there who cash in on things. I mean, we have people that are selling stuff on eBay and that are selling stuff on Etsy and everything else, people that are trying to take advantage. That's the nature of capitalism, right? I mean, that's what people do, and there's nothing we can do about it. So the best thing we can do is stay true to who we are. We buy our stuff local. We don't try to cut in and buy things from China that, you can get 1 million copies of something for half the price we can buy it from the mom and pop shop. And we stay true to ourselves, which is what we've done the entire time. And that's what's going to keep us alive. That's what keeps love and support for us. So Netflix can do what they want to do. People on Etsy can do what they want to do. It's not going to change who we are. And that's going to keep us around a little longer. So.
Thank you.
It is a little bit ironic, though, knowing that, for so long Blockbuster was the big corporate
Yeah.
evil entity, and
Nobody
now it's just
risks
this
that.
tiny store. We're like, oh no,
Do what you
big
gotta do.
Netflix, don't do the thing. But like in 2007, Blockbuster put
Was
a
the
lot of
meanies.
small stores out of it.
Not me. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say you're doing great on
Well,
the
thank you.
presentation. It doesn't sound like you're not doing something. You're doing great. And
Thank you. It's a lot easier with these guys. I would have not said a word if they weren't beside me.
I was curious, is that store open right now, or is
Oh, yeah.
everyone here?
Oh, no. It looks a little, our store's one. Yeah.
Is it empty? Like?
Oh, no, it's not empty, but there's big holes.
Okay,
So,
okay,
yeah. No, we divided our strength. Everybody that's here actually was in the documentary in some fashion. And I made my son come, both my sons were here earlier, but I made my son come and help out too. But we divided our strength. We've got a great team at home running the show. So.
That's awesome. I had one more. Do you host any video game competitions, tournaments?
No. So during the pandemic, we did comedy shows and all that kind of stuff pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
Since then, we haven't done anything. So this is the first real big thing we've done after that. We did recreate the beer. So you guys are all in the inn here because we haven't announced that yet. But we are doing that. We are teaming back up at 10 Barrels, so we will hopefully be launching something soon that will be in our location.
You guys should seriously feel privileged that she just
I
told you
know,
about the beer.
because half my staff doesn't know.
There's a lot of people that don't know we're doing that, and she's like, don't you tell anybody. And she just told all of you.
So, and then I'm also working with a couple here in Portland. As Shamim mentioned earlier, he came and did his birthday party, and we had lots of different people who've come and done, their anniversary photos, their engagement photos. But we are actually working with a couple from here in Portland that want to come get married in the store. So we are working on that.
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to be. So we are trying to do some other fun things that are unique and different. And again, it's awesome when we can do something with someone from Oregon, somebody in this local.
I live in Clackamas,
Okay.
and where I grew up, the Blockbuster there. It's actually right next to a Hollywood Video Game Crazy, and they all shut down at what seems like the same time. So
Yeah, it was very
my
quick.
head blew off. It was crazy, but it's now a dentist place. So
Yep.
there's that. But yeah, I would totally come for a competition. It's like 3
Well,
hours
and I
away
think,
from here.
Gerald
I'd
and I were talking about that today, so he was talking about recreating it, but we're down to a minute and a half, so
yeah.
thank you for your question.
Thank you.
So,
Great costume too.
yep.
So you're the last franchise alive. How much do you still have to deal with Dish Network? And
So
do you
we're-
still have resources available?
We do not. We are no longer a franchise, so in lieu of our franchise agreements, they gave us a licensing agreements, in which I re-sign every year. And we actually, it's usually in November, we re-signed it in September because they had to add that I could come here to see all of you wonderful people. So every time we go to do something different, we have to do an amendment to our agreement. But, you know, they have, Dish Network, I know, gets a bad rap because they closed all the stores, but you have to remember that they bought them when they were in serious trouble, and they really did try to save them, and they've never been anything but kind and offered us support from the beginning.
Yeah, they
So I have never gotten an indication that they won't keep working with us, but there is no support. We do everything ourselves. So, thank you.
Got time for one last quick question.
Yeah.
Comment and question. The comment is that I certainly realize this is a business, but at the same time it has somewhat of a pretty important historical perspective, especially like I take my son to record stores, and
Yeah.
something about that physical media that you just can't reproduce
100%.
online or anything like that. So I think that's really, really important. And then my question is around, is it getting harder and harder to source the physical media, DVDs and everything
Yeah.
else?
Amazon is my friend.
Yeah.
So if you'd have told me that a few years ago, I would never believed it either. But we are definitely Prime members, and we get really
We
spend
have
a
a lot of
stuff.
Prime boxes shipped to the store.
Our mailman does not like some of our days when we get things, but we have a really good relationship with him and the UPS drivers. So, but yes, it absolutely is. And the more unique it is, the harder it is to find. So that's when I really do appreciate the donations. So we have people from all over the country who donate VHS copies, DVDs, all of those things. And again, I mean, the amount of support we have gotten from all over the world, all over the country, has been phenomenal. And it, you know, someone actually asked me one time what it would feel like when I closed, when we do eventually close, which I hope will never happen. But then I had to actually think about it, and I actually got teary-eyed because I mean, I get wonderful stories, and where did she go? The little gal that was up here earlier that looked like she was going to cry when she first came up to the stage. Anyway, I get such wonderful stories, and I know we're out of time, I'm sorry. But I can't tell you how heartwarming it is when I have a girl come up, and I had this gal standing next to me with tears in her eyes, and she was telling me about her dad had passed. And her parents were divorced, and she would spend her weekends with her dad. And that was their thing to do, is come to Blockbuster. And he had recently passed. And so she came to visit the store and shared that story with me. And I get so many, gosh, I'm getting kind of emotional. I get so many wonderful stories. I had a gal whose son was special needs, and he had a hard time reading. And so they would come in and get movies, and they would put the closed caption on. And that was how he learned to read. And those are stories that make the experience of Blockbuster wonderful. And I will be so sad when I don't get to hear those stories anymore. So,
People will be telling you those stories for the rest of your
I
life.
hope so. I
Whether
hope
you're a
so.
Blockbuster or not.
So, thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and to the right are the playlist of the Portland Retro 2022 and some other interesting videos. Thank you.